I've had a few comments recently saying that breeding jumping spiders is bad, so I want to talk about it. So obviously this isn't a call out video, it's not an argument, it's just a conversation. Because I think that most concerns about breeding come from a genuine place of care, and I really respect that. So today I basically just want to talk about why I decided to start captive breeding jumping spiders. How it can be, in my opinion, beneficial, and what the science says about it. So if you're unsure, curious, or even if you're uncomfortable with the idea, stick around. So before we start, I just want to make something really clear. You don't have to agree with me by the end of this video, and you don't have to like breeding. My goal isn't to convince, it's just to inform the viewer. Because ethical animal care should be based on transparency, not fear or assumptions. When people say that breeding jumping spiders is wrong, it's usually due to a few common concerns. So they say things like they should stay in the wild, or I've been told it's exploitative, people think it harms natural populations, or the most common one, that it's just unnecessary. And if you think about it, all of those things are reasonable things to bring up, to discuss, or to ask about. So let's take them on one at a time. Oh! I have to keep that in, because that's insane. Hi. So I think one of the most important distinctions to make is the difference between wild caught and captive bred, and there is a very good reason to make that distinction, in my opinion. So when somebody says that a spider is wild caught, it means that you're taking them from out of their natural environment, which I never really suggest doing unless you're trying to reset pure bloodlines. And even so, I can't do that in this country because I'm in the UK and Bumble is a Phidippus otiosus and they do not occur naturally in the wild here. There is like a web just floating. So I couldn't take him anyway out of the wild. Not that I would, and I wouldn't encourage it either. Still, I always buy jumping spiders because I'm in the UK, and I just wouldn't encourage taking them from the wild. And I get a lot of questions about that. How beautiful. Chains like PetSmart in the US who are now offering jumping spiders, but they're not offering captive bred jumping spiders. They're mass taking from the wild, and that is damaging to wildlife populations. However, captive breeding, in my opinion, is not. As I stated, captive bred means that humans are breeding them. It's reducing pressure on wild populations because you're not taking loads from the wild. If I keep looking over there, it's because my monitor's there, sorry. And I want to say this isn't just true of spiders. It's well documented among reptiles, amphibians, fish, and invertebrates. Hi. Hi, Baba. Oh, he's just looking up at me. He's so cute. So that means that when people have access to captive bred spiders, the demand for wild caught decreases. And in my opinion, that is a very good thing. Essentially, it means that less spiders, or any animal, like amphibians and invertebrates, things like that, less are being taken from the wild, and that's really good. My arm is so sore, but he's cute and he's being really well behaved today, actually. Obviously, jumping spiders jump, we all know this, but he's quite a jumpy one, so I'm very surprised that he is just sat perched there, but that means he feels happy and safe, so that makes us very happy. So in conservation biology, captive breeding is used as a tool. So more of like a protective tool. So what I mean when I say that they use it as a genetic tool is it preserves genetic lines. So it allows researchers to study behaviour, and they can do that without harming wild populations. There he is. He's going to jump. I know he's going to jump. There he is, see? Let's have a little Bumble intermission. So, we were talking about conservation biology, and I got really sidetracked. So, it allows them to preserve genetic lines, and it allows them to study behaviours without harming wilder populations, which is what I was talking about earlier in terms of not having to grab them out of the wild, but to be able to observe their behaviours in captivity, and it's completely safe and you're not mass taking. So studies in invertebrate husbandry, I have found, have shown that captive-bred specimens generally experience less stress, adapt more easily to the enclosure environments such as these right here, and they actually have lower mortality rates. So in my opinion, this means that jumping spiders that are bred in captivity don't have to suddenly adjust to human environments as they're born into them, and to me that matters for welfare. However, I think it's important to address ethical breeding versus mass production. I'll be the first person to admit this, that not all breeding is done ethically. And I'm not talking about myself, I breed in small clutches and small numbers. So there's a difference between careful, small scale, welfare focused breeding, which I pride myself in. Not trying to toot my own horn, but that is how I practice this because I think it's just important. Mass production without regard for the animal that you're breeding, and in this case it would be jumping spiders. So in my opinion, ethical breeding is limited clutches, proper housing, appropriate feeding, so based on abdomen size, keeping a food chart, things like that, not breeding spiders back to back, so not having things go back to back. I don't know if that's making sense, but I know what that means. Not producing more animals that can be responsibly placed. For me, breeding is about stewardship and less about profit. For me, this has always been a hobby. If I can make money out of it, that's a happy bonus, but that to me is not the number one priority. So this is something that I'll always stick by, and that is every spider is raised with intention. Let's talk a bit more about education, because I think that's also really, really important. There's another benefit that often gets overlooked. This is one of the ones that I always talk about in my shorts on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, occasionally. Captive-bred spiders, jumping spiders in my case, are helping people overcome fear, and I am a living example of that. I used to be terrified of spiders when I was little, and now I have a lot of them. So I've actually read that arachnophobia is one of the most common fears in the world, and there is a lot of narrative around that that's just false, and that's reinforcing this fear. And in my opinion, gentle exposure, especially to calm and curious animals such as Bumble, is one of the most effective ways to reduce that fear. So if you think about it, every person who learns that spiders aren't monsters is one less person killing a spider out of fear. And to me, that really matters. I also think that there's a lot of things that we can learn from jumping spiders, and that I have certainly learned from keeping them as a hobbyist and now a breeder. They show us, and they've shown me in particular, that curiosity is safer than fear. They observe everything before reacting. They explore before assuming. Now, I don't know about you, I can take note from this. I think there's something very innately human about that. When we slow down and we seek understanding, we often make kinder choices for animals and for each other. If you still feel a little bit unsure about breeding, that's completely okay. All I can ask is that we base our opinions on welfare, evidence, and compassion, not instinctive discomfort. If you'd like to learn more about spiders and to see how they are raised, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.